Good morning, everyone.
Morning. All right, it being a little after 9 o'clock, we'll bring the Facilities and Property Management Committee to order with the agenda item number 1, approval of the minutes of the September 27th, 2023 Facility and Property Management Committee.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Moving on to correspondence shared by committee members. Anybody have anything? Nobody has anything. Okay,
You want me to make
Sure.
a motion?
Yeah.
Can I make a motion to move this what's it called?
the building assessment.
Building assessment study up to number right above number 4. Would be a pretty good spot.
Okay,
Before 4 or after 4? Well, what do you think? I think it should be right after 4, I guess. Second.
motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, moving on to public input on agenda items. We have Supervisor Bedfording here.
Yes, thank you. I would like to, first off, Brian Dufferding, 686 Oak Street, Neenah, Supervisor District 6. I would like to talk a little bit about the Tri-County Ice Arena. Now, when I was a kid, I was born and raised in Appleton, and when I was a kid, I went to the ice arena fairly regularly back in the early 80s, and it was a great place, a very vibrant place. There was just tons of skaters there, and it was just a lot of fun. I just remember getting some hot cocoa there after a long day of skating, and it was just a great time. And that great memory that I've had of the Tri-County Ice Arena is kind of today, the Tri-County Ice Arena is a bit of a shadow of those early childhood memories. This was brought to my attention from Kathy Boyette, who is also, full disclosure, on City Council for Neenah, but also has a daughter that is into hockey and has participated in a lot of matches at the Tri-County Ice Arena and practiced there at the Tri-County Ice Arena. And she brought to my attention of several things that were certainly of issue. Now, admittedly, I had to do some research about the Tri-County Ice Arena myself. I just remember, those memories I had when I was a kid. But I was like, what's the Tri-County Ice Arena like today? So I had to take a look at the lease, and I had to do some history. And I want to thank Director Elder for his history as well, to help out on what has been going on over the last 8 to 9 years. And it sounds like from at around 2015 or so, there was a lease agreement made with Appleton Ice. And essentially, it seemed to me that it was kind of like the county's way of just taking it off the books and eventually giving it over to Appleton Ice upon the completion of the lease, which I believe is in 2025. I think it's 2025 or 2029.
I think it's 25.
25, okay, all right. So, and almost kind of like a rent to own sort of thing. But once that's already been paid, they've already paid for it up front, and they just need to maintain the agreement of the lease until 2025, and then Appleton Ice will have full ownership. Now, keep in mind, Appleton Ice also, they also have their own little place called the Champion Center over in Appleton. And that seems to be a really good facility. Admittedly, I've not stepped in there, so I can't really testify to its conditions there. But I did walk through the Tri-County Ice Arena recently, and I highly encourage every supervisor on this committee to take a stroll through there. It is open from, I believe, 4 to 9 p.m. So that's exactly what I did. Is I just popped in there and I just walked around between 4 and 9 p.m. and I wanted to take a look at the conditions. And then I took a look at the lease that we have here, which I have right here. And it states in term and rental under subsection 4C, the facility shall be maintained by lessee so as to meet all state, local, and federal building safety and other codes required for a building used for a skating or convention facility. Now, one thing I've noticed is that that facility is not ADA compliant, and that includes low degree on ramps and off ramps for those that are on a wheelchair, that are in a wheelchair. And that was one of the first, and not only that, but the doors were not, they didn't have like an automatic open and close button. So that was one thing that just popped in my head right away. And the other thing too is you can see the picture that I've given you there. I took a look at the ceiling of that place, and you can see that there's some holes there. There's been a couple places where it's exposed and there's holes in the ceiling. And it does state also in the lease that they are required to maintain the roof. And so if there's holes in the ceiling, what's going on there? Is that are there holes in the roof? Is there some degradation going on? We need to know. And if that's the case, then they are required to maintain it. The other thing too is that the sign is not the sign doesn't work. I mean, it's only half lit. And I believe according to the lease, they are required to fix that too. Now, just recently, they did fix the parking lot, because if anyone has ever parked there over the last year, that parking lot was an embarrassment. I mean, it was just it was dirt. There was all sorts of holes everywhere. It was just kind of it was a really shoddy parking lot. They did a GoFundMe to finally get some blacktop going, and so they did fix that part to their credit. But it took a lot of funds from and a lot of work from other people in order for that to happen. Not only that, but they're not they didn't actually pave the whole entire lot too. I think from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they ran into some impervious surface regulations, probably with the city of Fox Crossing or the village of Fox Crossing in regards to stormwater. But there's still plenty of places there to park your car. So they did some improvements there to their credit. But it's very clear that they are not. The other thing too is that the kitchen is not operable. They basically shut down the kitchen. And now, granted, there isn't anything in the lease that says anything about the kitchen, so they don't have to. But they did decide to put up a bunch of vending machines and just call it good. And so there's essentially no kitchen there. There's no operable kitchen. I don't think that they probably don't have anything licensed with the public health department or anything like that. So there's if you look at the Tri-County Ice Arena, and if you remember it, back during its glory days, back in the early 80s, it's a very, very different situation. It just looks like a very shoddy, dumpy place. And so I think that they need to simply hold up their end of the bargain. They just need to hold up their end of the lease. They need to make some they need to make some capital improvements. They need to take a look at the roof. They need to make sure that that it's structurally sound. They need to make those repairs, and of course, per the lease, they have to make it ADA compliant. And so that's something that they need to hold to. Granted, I have not gotten in contact with anyone from Appleton Ice yet. This is where your committee comes into play. You have to. I'm hoping that you'd be able to discuss what would be the next step and what to do here. Now, with the Appleton Ice, it's very similar to how it is with the county board. A lot of people just get shuffled around, and new people are in Appleton Ice. And as far as I know, the people that signed the lease back in 2015, they are no longer part of Appleton Ice. Appleton Ice is very much like, these are parents of kids that are into hockey. Once their kid is done with hockey, then they just kind of move on to they shuffle that responsibility over to another parent. So so I would encourage that we get in contact with Appleton Ice, make these notes of the things that they need to do to withhold their part of the lease. And if they can't, then we have the option to nullify the lease. And if that's the case, then that doesn't necessarily mean that it's now just becomes county property. There is another vested interest into the Tri-County Ice Arena. That's literally right across the street. That's the Ogden YMCA. And they are definitely interested in the Tri-County Ice Arena. They have that, they would like to have that be an expanded operation of what they do. So this is something where we could still, have this thing be off the books of for the county, but still make it an actual really good facility too, without it being a burden to the taxpayers. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor Deputy.
Can we ask questions?
No,
No.
not the public. No, we'll talk about this and we'll put it on the agenda
All right.
next month. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Moving on to discussion and approval of an easement with WPS for a new electrical service at 851 County Road Y, the 980 facility.
This is becoming a standard process with WPS. If they have to put a transformer or anything on the property, they want easements for the route of the underground to the transformer and then to our meter heads. So this is just kind of a basic easement to allow them to put their stuff on there to provide power to the new 980 facility.
Is there a motion? Oh, you have a question?
Is that on the right of way? Or on the property?
It would be on the property.
I'll make a motion to approve this new electrical service for the easement.
The easement for the new one.
Yeah, an easement for the new electrical
I'll
service.
second.
Thank you. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
And Mike, just to clarify, this gives them the ability to go on premise and
Right.
any,
Right.
that's the point of some of these easements. So if the transformer does go out in the middle of the night, they don't have to call for permission to go on the property and
Right,
fix what's
right,
what's there.
exactly.
That's you.
Right. A little extra policy information on why we do these easements.
Thank you, John. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, we'll have folks from McKinstry.
What I'd like to do is introduce Tyler Zastrow from McKin Street. And I've got Tim McAvoy on Zoom from McKin Street to help me go over and explain the facilities assessment project that we did. You all got a copy of the report, and I think it's a relatively good report card. I kind of figured there were gonna be a lot more buildings that were in deeper trouble than they are. We do have 4 buildings that are at a point in their life where we should probably consider replacing them. And what I can do is I can bring that up now and kind of show you. What we got out of the process was something called, it's a dashboard, which has all of our buildings located. So we can, if you take a look at, let's see. Yeah. This is where we have all the buildings, shows all here. We can click on it and, it'll give us some information about the buildings. But we can go into capital planning, which is where we're really kind of looking at it. And it will show, if I go down here, let's see. If we, okay, let me see how I want to do this.
You're looking for FCI, Mike, or are you? looking
Yeah,
for FCI, go back to overview,
okay,
and then where it says map on the top left, click.
charcoal charts, yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry, this is a whole new system I gotta learn.
Mhm.
But if you take a look at this, if we graph it by high to low, and what we do is we have a facility condition index, which basically grades the buildings on how bad they are. And if it goes over 0.3, those are buildings that are strong candidates for replacement. And as you can see, we've got 3 buildings. We have the Sunnyview Garage, which is one of the old existing or original sanitarium, nurses' residence, garages on the fairgrounds. And Parks is using it as a remote workshop. Then we have hangar number 7 at the airport. And then we have the fire station number 9, which is the fire station we have at the end of Knapp Street that we share with the city. They provide the services, we provide the building and some of the equipment. So those 3 buildings are candidates for replacement. And we'll have to make a decision on what we want to do with those in the near future. The buildings between like 0.2 and 0.3 are buildings that are coming up on their lifespan that we need to make some hard decisions on whether we want to spend the money to extend their life more, or that we start making plans for replacing them in the future. And so those are one of the Parks Workshop buildings, the Orange King building, the transfer station, and talking with John Raby, they have plans kind of in the works that they've been talking about in solid waste that they want to replace the transfer station. Anyhow, because that building was built as a recycling center and not so much as a transfer station. So it really doesn't fit their needs. We've got the community bathhouse pavilion, whatever you want to call it. That does need some good work. The BMX clubhouse is right at that point. The rest of the buildings, excuse me, are in relatively good shape. When we get all the way down to, we have newer buildings down here that, you know, their FCI is at basically 0, or they're small enough that we don't really grade them because, you know, it's relatively inexpensive to replace when it comes to be that time. So that's where the buildings kind of go, and it kind of shows a graphical explanation of what we had in the reports that you guys saw. Once we go and we take a look at that, we can go into capital planning, right? Yep. And what I can show is, so this is projected expenditures over the 10 years that we show on the graph, but we can actually go out, I think we go out like 60, 65 years. So that we can kind of plan as we go forward further. But what we have is we have about 6 years down the road, we've got a couple of buildings that are really going to be expensive to keep up. We've got the jail that was built in 2003. So in 6 years, that'll be roughly 2030. So the building's going to be 27 years old, and there's a lot of significant equipment in the building that's going to be at its projected end of useful life. We've got the chillers, we've got the boilers, we've got air handlers. Those are all going to be really large ticket items that we're going to have to replace. So what we're going to try and do is find ways that we can kind of level load this a little bit and take care of it maybe a little bit early, or do some work to extend the life of them. Parkview is another one. That one was built in 2008. So we already know we've got 5 rooftop units there that use R22, which used to go for, I think, is it 20 pound? You know, like the containers that we got for your grills for propane.
Yeah.
Those used to be about $100. They're about $1,700 now when we have to recharge the air conditioning. R22 at the beginning of 2020s they were not producing anymore. So whatever's in the market, so like if we replace a piece of equipment and we reclaim it and we turn it in, that goes back to the manufacturer, it gets cleaned up and recycled and goes back in the marketplace. But as people develop leaks or whatever, and it escapes the atmosphere, there is nothing being made to replace that loss. So it's just going to get more expensive as it goes along. Yeah.
So what did they replace the R22 with?
It used to be 134, then it's 410. And they're finding that some of these still have a greenhouse gas coefficient that's not acceptable. I don't know what the latest one is right now, because they're working on these all the time. So that rather than replacing all the equipment, because refrigeration or HVAC equipment is designed for the refrigerant that it uses. We can have what's called a drop-in refrigerant. And we did try some of that, I believe, in the Orange King building, and it didn't work as well as we had planned. So they're trying to come up with new refrigerants for us all the time. I think I just bought a new freezer, and it has, I think it's hexane as a refrigerant. And some of these are more flammable than Freon was. So they're looking at all these things. To answer your question, in a short answer, it changes from time to time on what we can use. They'll take something off the market because of a health hazard.
You can't do drop-in refrigerant with, what is it, 22?
Yeah,
R22 to 410, you can't do drop-in with that.
no,
You
it's
gotta
not.
replace all the
It's,
equipment, right?
it's, yeah. Yeah.
All the
if-
lines have to be replaced and pulled and replaced.
If we don't have a drop-in available, you have to replace all of your lines.
That's planned obsolescence for you.
Yeah. And you have to usually replace your compressors. So it becomes a significant issue.
Yeah.
But Parkview again has boilers that we're gonna have to replace. We've already replaced the water heaters. They didn't last as long as what we thought they would. But we've got the air handlers, the boilers, and the air conditioning plans for Parkview. So,
That isn't any building stuff, that's just all mostly fixtures, right?
Well, correct. The exterior of the building's EFS, and that has been. We had a significant issue when the place was built.
Yeah,
There's two styles of EFS that you can do. It's a wet style or a dry style. And the contractor put in a hybrid between the two, so it didn't really perform the way it was supposed to. And it wasn't really the way it was designed. And I think about 5-6 years ago, we made a claim with Byron for a warranty claim. So they came back and they did $400,000 worth of repairs. But, I'm gonna say probably with the lifespan of the building, eventually we're gonna wanna probably replace that EFS with like vinyl siding or cement board or something else. Because EFS,
can you go over it or do you have to tear it out?
you could probably,
You can go over it.
but
Yeah, you can go over it. You can change the color. You can go over it. You look at the Hilton Garden Inn down there.
Yeah.
That was built in 2000, and then they did a facade upgrade, changed the color of the EFS, and so they did that about 5 years ago.
How are the roofs, is that part of that?
well, the roofs are, with the jail, that's another one I got to
30
take
years.
the jail and with Parkview. We've got shingle roofs that are supposed to be 30 years on the gables at Parkview, and should have a 20-year rubber membrane roof. So we're looking at 2028 is the lifespan of the roof.
Is that in your projection?
Yeah. So, and the jail has got a built-up roof that is supposed to be 30+ years. So that would get us out to 2033.
So,
Go ahead.
so you're saying like, they got a plan for all of this?
No, they've given us,
Idea,
they've given us the lifespan,
the lifespan.
when they think it should be replaced. And they've given us a cost estimate for what it would take to.
Okay, so the cost estimate is probably pretty high,
Well,
it's hard to get anything nowadays.
Net present value of all of it's 90 million?
Yeah.
90.6 million.
Yeah, I'll just give everybody just an overview of how this can be deceiving from time to time. The roof at solid waste, I believe, that was replaced maybe 10 years ago.
which buildings?
The recycling center, I think it was, or what highway, or one of them over there was replaced maybe 10 years ago. There was nothing wrong with the roof. Somebody told the county that they needed to replace the roof, and saying, well, it's past its lifespan. All the insulation was dry. It was I knew the people were doing it. They're like, nothing wrong with this roof. And so really need to be use intent when we do this stuff, just because somebody says it is passive. I mean, it's a double-edged sword on stuff like Mike will talk about with the boilers in the courthouse, that they're well past their life expectancy, but they've been working for, they weren't working that great the other day, but,
No, they were too good.
yeah, they're working too good. So anyways, I just want to make sure that folks do know that those are type of things that happen. And unfortunately, some people will take the county for a ride on things, and, it happens. So, county executive.
Yeah, a couple of things, to your point with the boilers, and it's true, we've been able to extend the boilers well past their life. That being said, the boilers in the courthouse were made in a different era. They were made to run forever, versus some of the boilers that we have now, they're not made to the same quality. But another question, if I may ask more to the McKinstry folks, because you've done a whole bunch of projects for a whole bunch of different governments across the nation. What are you guys seeing people changing from the refrigerator, the R22 model? Is there something that we're looking at that we think is going to be sustainable? Or are we going to go to a model of something they're also going to discontinue in 20 years?
Sure. Tim, if you don't mind, I'll let you take that one, this kind of your neck of the woods.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. Tim McAvoy. Yeah, that's that's a tricky question. So they are continuously phasing refrigerants out. So our 134A is actually due to be phased out in a few years. And if you remember, like 10 years ago, that was what everybody was installing. So they keep kind of moving the goalposts, shifting the goalposts as these refrigerants keep coming out, that do have lower greenhouse gas. And so to answer your question, I mean, there's a few options that people are installing that have significantly less greenhouse gas impact. One of them, which is certainly still in development, but I will just throw out there, is CO2, which is counterintuitive, but when it's kept in a closed loop, that has the lowest. I think it has a greenhouse gas impact of 1, since that's what it's sort of measured on. But there's several options. And so as you replace the equipment, that is just something to keep an eye on, is the refrigerant that's being used, and kind of cross-referencing where the current mandates are in terms of being phased out. And that will give you the longest lifespan, certainly past the useful life of, a rooftop unit, which, might be 15 years, 20 years, something like that. So just something to keep mindful of as you're replacing these outdated equipment. And so we can send Mike, I'll send you the kind of the link as far as, what is currently due to be phased out, and the timeline there.
And I did ask Mike this the other day, this is, I'm just gonna stick with another thought process here. Is you guys have a dashboard, like, okay, here are the buildings, here are the roofs, here's the life expectancy. Is that in the dashboard?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta find it.
Yeah, no worries. Because that's something that comes up. I know other municipalities kind of have in their CIP plans where they're gonna say, okay, we know this roof is gonna cost this much right now. It's 25 years old. We're gonna plan to replace it.
Yeah, and I would just add, if I may, we are physically inspecting each piece of equipment, each roof.
Mhm.
And while those expected useful lives out in the industry do kind of give us a rough idea of when things should potentially be replaced, we're using our own engineering opinion to alter those values so that they're more realistic. And when things are close to being replacement, in the next 3 years, that's where we can truly use some of our engineering judgment and define it. With things that are 10, 20 years out, a lot of things that can come into play. Operating environment, how much Mike wants to spend on maintaining the equipment, those things are just gonna change if something's gonna last 20 years or 30 years. I think this is a good start, and I would say an even better start are the assets coming up for replacement soon.
Well, yeah, anything within the first 10 years is gonna impact that present value figure more than the stuff that's on 20 or 30.
Go ahead, Jim.
Is this, and maybe it's not even possible, listen, go back to the 22. Is it possible that we could have stockpiled that? Or is
We
that
have.
against the law too?
We have, but
I mean,
it does become a problem where there are certain things with,
maybe it breaks down.
hazardous materials that we have to register with the state.
Okay,
And if you're gonna store them, then you have to have the facility to be able to store them. You know, it's like one year when salt for doing sidewalks and everything was really in critical supply.
Yeah.
We stockpiled it and then we found out we crossed the threshold that we had to report it as a hazardous material. So, and then you have to report it every year until you use it up. And, you know, so we didn't use it all up that year. And then the next year we didn't have much of a winter. So it's like we ended up having to report on it for 2, 3, 4 years. And then you have to pay a fee for every chemical that you have there.
okay.
So, you know, and it's just like, you know, light bulbs are considered a hazardous material. So when you have light bulbs and they burn out and you want to store them so that you can recycle them all at one time, then you have to have a certain area where you can store them, because they're hazardous material. So with refrigerant, it's an oxygen displacing environment. So you end up having to have an alarm system put in there in case something leaks and starts displacing the oxygen. And then you have to have it in a secured space. So can we do it? Yeah. How much do we get? You know, we've been replacing R22 equipment every year.
Sure.
So, I think we finally, last year, we finished up at the Otter Street building. We replaced all the R22 equipment there. You know, now the next big building that we've got is, Parkview. We've got those 5 rooftop units that are all R22. So, you know, we've looked at it, we've gotten some opinions of probable cost. You know, they're talking, it's probably gonna be like about $1 million for us to do that. So, that's how we gotta work it into the capital plan. And, you know, up until now, it's kind of been, you know, which forest fire do we put out first? Having McKinsey be able to do this, we kind of now know which forest fires are raging
Yeah.
and which ones we can ignore for a little bit of time. So it's gonna help with our capital plan.
Is the replacement refrigerant, is it more efficient or less efficient than R22? Is it more higher operating cost?
It depends on which refrigerant
Higher
you need for
maintenance
the
costs?
application.
They have higher maintenance costs? Higher.
Maintenance cost is about the same, but,
operating costs?
I do know, like, when we went to, 410 or 134, the efficiency dropped.
Yeah, I think it is a little less. That's what I think.
You know, so it's not as, so the equipment has to be bigger,
Mhm.
which means it takes more energy and it takes more refrigerant to get the same cooling that we had with R22.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
I'm just speaking of my own home unit.
Yeah.
I think it's less efficient than R22.
All of the data that's on the screen is also the same.
The chart's not there.
This chart is.
I'd love to have.
I can put it, well, what I can do is,
I can export one for you, Mike.
no, I can get it too. I can get it for you.
Mike's a pro, he's a power user.
Yeah.
But what we can do, you know, okay, so I showed you the bar graph with all the different buildings, which is basically what this is kind of showing here graphically.
Yeah.
They're showing us these buildings here are the worst buildings. They're red. You know, so, we gotta do something with those.
And when you say replacement of those buildings, are you necessarily gonna replace them or would you discontinue them and don't demolish them? You know, do we
That's-
need them?
That's the question.
That's
Do we need them or
the,
can we shut them down?
that's the policy discussion that we have to have as a county, you know, and it's really kind of hard. It's a hard policy discussion to have.
Or sell them, you know? So you
Yeah.
know,
You know, like,
shut 'em down, demolish them or sell 'em.
here, the worst building we've got basically shows is like hangar number 7. Hangar number 7 was used by a flight school and it needs a lot of work. And right now, it seems to be just being used as a hangar, which rather than putting a whole lot of money into bringing up the exterior of the building, replacing the windows, the roof, inside finishes we need to fix because the drywall is falling apart in some areas. You know, maybe we just tear down that building and we put up a hangar.
Or you could sell it though, right? You can sell an acre.
Well, yeah,
It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, because they build them and they own
yeah. But,
them, you know.
but this is one,
grounds.
that's a policy discussion that aviation committee is gonna have to have. Because this is essentially a hangar that we own and we're charging rent for.
But you could sell that hangar and keep a ground lease
We could,
and let someone else do the repairs. And then you wouldn't have to tear the building down. You could,
I was, from the pictures I saw of the building,
probably too far gone.
It's-
I've seen it. I know what building you're talking
We kind of have a couple pointed questions here. And maybe it's in the report. I didn't see, energy savings. So I'm looking at just specifically like the Oran King building, okay? And we've had this in the CIP plan for a number of years to replace the windows, correct, Mike?
yeah,
Like 4 years at least to replace the windows. Do you guys account for that in some of the projects? Obviously, lighting upgrades, HVAC upgrades are gonna be a cost savings to the taxpayer by energy efficient measures. Do you guys include that in a snapshot of the building?
We don't, so the costs you're seeing are one-for-one replacement of a similar asset. It's a little bit more of a complicated, feasibility study. What can we install? How much savings is it gonna, is it gonna generate? We certainly can, but that wasn't what we did.
That wasn't in there, okay. And I'm just.
We are though, sorry, and keep going, we are working with Mike and included in this initial scope was a very deep dive at the law enforcement center in terms of retro commissioning and doing a lot of those energy savings opportunity developments. So we're doing that currently and should have a report for you on that if I had to.
Thank you, Heather. And then getting your numbers here, I'm just looking at the windows because I think we had that in the CIP plan for a couple $100,000.
Sure.
And you have in there $73,240. I guess, are you specifically just going off of square footage? Because we already have some of that work done with an estimate. I don't know if we went out for, I don't think we went out for bid.
we got an opinion of
Opinion
cost.
of cost, so. Yeah, how do you define that? And, is just by square footage or how do you come up with those?
Yeah, for the windows specifically, it is a square footage
Okay.
unit cost, right,
Okay.
to replace that window with a more modern but similar type of window.
And when you went into this facilities assessment study, did you have all, like, this, we do have a number of, I wouldn't say bids, but right, plans, we're gonna be estimates on some of this stuff. Did you go into this facilities assessment with that information?
We did not, and we certainly can update this to reflect those prices.
Yeah,
Because
'cause
whatever you're getting at the county is gonna be way better than
Yeah,
anything industry-wide, nationwide that we're gonna be able to.
And one of the caveats I'll say with that is when we talk to people with opinions of probable cost. And I've said this numerous times at the county board, we don't really know what the cost of a project's gonna be until the bid comes in.
right,
If you take a look at the masonry repairs that we did for the courthouse, we had an opinion of probable cost of like close to $900,000. And the bid came in at a fraction of that cost.
Yeah.
And then we had a bid, an estimate, an opinion of probable cost for doing masonry work at the Oran King building. And the bid went out at the same time that we had the person there working at the courthouse. And they said, well, since we're right here, we don't have to have mobilization costs because their bid came in low. And we said, how come you're so low? And he said, because we're here on the site already. Our crane's here, our people are here, we can do it for this much. So we save a lot of money there. Whereas we've had some other projects where we had the contractor give us a cost. We took a look at it, increased the cost, and then when the bids came in, it came in double what they had told us in the first place. So, it's when it comes time for these cost estimates that we're giving you, it's really hard for me to tell you guys to hang your hat on it because it depends on the market condition. It depends on the material availability. And it depends on the workload of all the contractors. And, one of the things that has slowed down some of our projects is just that the contractors have the same labor problems that we have. People are not going into the trade. So they are cannibalizing everybody else to try and get people for their job.
I'll push back on that a little bit. It's not necessarily true. It's true for some contractors, but I will say with the trades that I work with, they've had their largest apprenticeship classes that they've ever had in the last number of years. So, I mean, while that is true for some, especially in the residential market, mostly in the commercial market, you know, yes, it is still, you know, the average age is still higher, but we will say that there's been huge strides and by that numbers of apprentices coming into the folks, the programs, it's changed immensely. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that tide is changing. I think people are seeing the college debt and understanding that this is a good living and a good future. And I would
Yeah.
agree, apprenticeships are going up.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to talk with this while we're considering our facility condition assessment is the one thing that was not done in this study is the space assessment. Are we maximizing our space? I think that's another thing we have to take a look at, and do we have enough room to offer these services? To assume the duties that are happening in the Orton building, or do we have to fix it? I mean, these are questions that we have to have. What are our long range needs here? What is the actual space we need in the Neenah Human Services building? And are we going to be upkeeping a lot more than we actually need? And that's something Mike was pushing for when I first got here, space standards. How many square feet can an office be? Do we need an office that's giant, you know, or what can you actually get your stuff done on? How can we be more efficient? If you go to the county administrator, or the David W. Albrecht building, administrative building, and you go to the third floor, you walk into a lot of open space. Fourth floor, on your way to HR, you walk into a lot of open space. We have multiple buildings in our county that have open space like that. So while we're looking at this and the price tags, we need to look at operationally, what is our plan and how do we actually achieve that? Because Mike, if you can go back to the 10-year outlook. And again, it doesn't mean that these are where these numbers are going to hit. As Andy said, we were able to extend the life of our boilers in the court system or in the courthouse longer. It doesn't mean that this is where it's actually going to hit, but our financial plan is not to bond more than $10 million a year, right? Lucky for us, we're in a position where our debt level is lower than any other county our size. We are one of the lowest, if not the lowest in the state. But you see those 10 million marks. Don't forget, this does not include highway projects, where we are supposed to keep up $5 million a year of road work, and $5 million doesn't get you the same amount of miles it used to 5 years ago. So we have that getting higher too. So we definitely have a challenge coming. But if we plan for it and we make smart decisions, we can accomplish this.
Well, my question is probably, you, Mike, is it gonna be set in the plan? Because you know as well as I do, these projects, you go out and you get a bid, and then that project doesn't get done for a year. So then the cost of that project is some kind, like what happened to the roadway, what did it double or something, or whatever it was? Do we have a compensation for that? Are we gonna add on a certain percentage? Because you know what I'm saying?
I usually add on a certain percentage. One of the processes that really gets me in a bind with doing our capital projects, and I'll take the evidence garage is one of them. That started out as a 2,500 square foot storage building with some Modine heaters and basically a 2,500 square foot parking lot for excess stuff that they don't have room for in the evidence garage. I end up having departments. That's what we signed off, that's what we put in the capital plan. We added on the morgue, which expanded the project, but to be truthful, the morgue's been ready to go out for bid since May. What's been a problem is, I have departments that say, well, I need this just to store evidence, and it starts becoming Oh, well, now we need water in here. Oh, now it's not just a storage building, now it's become a garage, which puts it in a different classification for building use. Which now means, you know, if we're gonna have that.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, I would advise to keep it on task, I don't know, if this is
Okay.
the agenda.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
want to be fair to the public here, yeah,
Okay,
Mhm.
sorry, Mike.
well, what ends up happening, and we're trying to change the process. So that we get the engineering done and we get an opinion of probable cost before we come to the county board to get the project finally approved.
And on top of that, I would say that with McKinstry's input now, we're gonna have more accurate estimates.
Okay,
The
that's
highway
really
project, we went off an estimate from 2017.
yeah,
That was a
well,
little bit,
that's
that was a little bit of learning.
yeah, that was a learning process, right?
I would point out though, this is a guide, it's a good guide,
Mhm.
it's a detailed guide,
Yes,
but, you know, just because they're saying that in year 7, we're gonna have 10 million in repair costs in
Yep.
front of us, that doesn't mean that we really will.
No,
We could have more or
You know,
less.
more or less, you can delay stuff, you can do it sooner,
I mean,
or you can not do it at all.
and let's go back to the initial, I mean, Mike has been the facilities director since the late nineties and has been asking for having a facilities assessment since then, and this committee and board was able to help achieve that goal, and
Mhm.
I mean, what Mike was saying in the past, that certain people would come with their projects and say, hey, we need to have this done, you know, and here's our blueprint about how we're gonna move forward here. So,
Can I ask a question? One quick question, if you did need it in space needs study, does a firm like yours do those?
We have done them in the past. We typically, bring an architecture, subject matter expert in, whether internally or externally to help them.
we've done 2 or 3 of them in the county already.
Do you hire it out?
Yeah. Simply because there's a lot of stuff we could do in-house. But we're a small staff, we
Right.
can't do everything.
Of course.
And we don't have some of the capabilities that somebody who does this as a business.
Well, certainly you wouldn't have got something like this done in the
No.
time frame that they did.
No.
No chance.
Because I was trying to do something like this way back when Bernie Egan was our county committee chair.
Mhm.
And I've got something there, but we never got to finish it. So,
so once back to you again, so you're talking about this space.
Mhm.
So what are we gonna do about it?
Oh, we have to look at it, of course.
I mean, you know, are we gonna have them do a study on it or?
Well, it is something that we want to propose. Me and Mike have been talking about, potentially another spirit fund ask, to, like we did with this facility condition assessment. To look at it. One prime example is Mike talked about, space limitations, if you would, or standards for offices. On the 4th floor against the windows on Otter Street, Ryan, there used to be only 2 offices there. There's the director of finance and the county executive. That is now 5, right?
Mhm.
I said, this is a lot of open space. This is crazy. Like, we can build this out and we can cut a little bit of office space off here and we can add spaces here and here's a side that's the size you need to get your work done. We don't need, an office the size of this room, would not be useful to me. That doesn't mean it's the same for everybody, but we at least have to have a standard. So there's one example where a space where only 2 offices is now 5. Simply because we were reasonable, with the space that we need. So that's one hallway. How many hallways we have in the county that we take a look at, there's plenty. And if we can do that, and we can do that in a way where we can get all those services or all those offices into one building versus 3, that'll save us money in the long run multiple times. I mean, you're talking about energy bills as well. You're talking about replacement costs as well. The smaller footprint of a roof you can get under, the cheaper it is to replace that roof versus 3 larger roofs over time. So to your point, does it necessarily have to be 10 million? No, it doesn't have to necessarily be 10 million. But also, I encourage everybody to look beyond the 10 years. Let's set it up for 30 years from now. Let's set it up for 40 years from now. Let's make sure we have very well educated policy decisions made to set this up for
Yeah,
the
but
future.
again, the numbers beyond 10 don't impact this analysis that much.
No, they don't, but you can
So-
set it up for it.
Yeah, but again, you know, the present value figures that you're estimating here, you get beyond 10, the impact is much more minimal.
I guess,
All right.
I would like to hear from the McKinstry folks, both online and Tyler, I guess, you know, about your, you know, you did this wonderful report just for those. McKinstry is probably world renowned. I know in the States for sure, they, about doing this kind of work. I've heard their name over and over again with doing really good work. So we appreciate that. But I guess I would personally like to hear from you guys, the people doing the work about our conditions of study, about what you found, you know, in where we're gonna go from here.
Sure. Yeah, you know, in general, I think Mike shared this or alluded to it. Oftentimes with local government municipalities, they are typically underfunded. It's not the same as a private office corporation. It's gonna have really low facility condition index scoring. So to have only 3 facilities that are, you know, up in that 0.3 or above range, I think was a pretty good thing compared to what we've typically seen. We do have a lot of buildings. That was one, you know, takeaway for me is there's a lot going on, especially when you stack up all the, how many, 37 parks buildings or something like that. You know, those add up. But in general, yeah, I think though a lot of the costs you see are typically related to the big heavy HVAC related equipment. And your maintenance teams have done a great job keeping those up. You know, the courthouse boilers are, you know, an antique. I won't say antiques, maybe not, but things like that, they take a pretty smart staff to continue to operate. And obviously they've done that pretty well for the, you know, in the previous years, but it is getting to the point where if things aren't replaced, it's when those sudden failures start to occur. You know, once you get above that 30-year life expectancy, that sudden failures start to occur. And that's when it really, you know, burns you on the back end. And Mike's dipping into his O&M budget to do an emergency repair on an air handler when in reality, you know, it was already 10 years past its emergency expected fix. So that's what I would, you know, encourage you all to take away is, you know, things can operate longer, but that risk of sudden failure, you know, just keeps creeping up as they age.
Thank you.
Would you add anything, Tim?
Yeah, I might just add, so, you know, as part of the facility condition assessment, we are providing the Reveal dashboard, and we will be providing support on capital planning for at least the next year. And so, you know, I think one of you mentioned, you know, kind of that roof example, you know, 10 years ago that, you know, it didn't necessarily need to be replaced. We do, as Tyler mentioned, you know, provide our own observed condition. So we provide the ASHRAE and the BOMA standards for when things should be replaced, different assets should be replaced, but then also our observed life. And so those are the conversations that I think, you know, we'll be having. We kind of laid out a roadmap for you all in terms of all the assets that you have in all of your buildings. But I think now the kind of in terms of the next step would be prioritizing, you know, with you collaboratively in terms of, you know, which ones that you agree, you know, we really want to prioritize. And that's really the value of the dashboard is it's very easy to kind of customize things moving forward. And so things can definitely be sliding backwards and forwards different years in terms of priorities. That's, you know, this is just kind of a starting point. It's certainly a very dynamic dashboard, which is what we, you know, why we provide it. I might add one more thing. One of the asset criteria is, and so these large HVAC upgrades have, you know, energy efficiency impacts, and those can actually be capitalized and used as a funding source outside of your typical sort of capital budget. So if you replace, you know, carpet, you know, tuck pointing, things like that, you won't be able to have operating savings and energy savings to capitalize or to finance that project. However, if you have chiller replacements, boiler replacements, rooftop units, there's enough energy savings there that you can actually use that to self-fund a solution. So if you do throughout this process realize that maybe there's more to be done than you have in your, bonding or your capital budget, things like that. That is another option, to take those large energy projects and create sort of a self-funding mechanism to make those projects work for you financially.
Thank you. But I just have a few more questions. When we initially sat down, was that January of this year or February? Something like that. One of the things that McKinstry talked about was the ability to help the county with the grant writing processes. Is that in this proposal I mean, that was one of the things that we had talked about and discussed, that's a good option, maybe that some of the other firms did not provide. Is that included in any of these reports with any, we have, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Plan, there's grant opportunities within those mechanisms, and is that something that McKinstry is currently working on with the county can or will do? Because that's what was definitely one of the topics when we discussed this going back in January and February.
Yeah, you won't see any specific mention of grants or the funding in the report. However, as Tim mentioned, we are still involved with the county over the next at least year in helping with those items related to capital planning, helping prioritize, and as things are prioritized, that's when we can start to identify where funding options present themselves. Tim, would you add anything on the grant writing there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the kind of the next step, as Tyler mentioned, as certain projects kind of float to the top in terms of next year and getting priority. That is definitely something that we provide. And so we have some other team members that specialize that a little more than we do. So I don't want to speak on their behalf, but they will be being brought into some of these conversations as they occur moving forward.
Yeah, I don't know if it was how your team works in Wisconsin, how we're broken down, but just hearing in passing, oh yeah, McKinstry came to us and we needed to get this grant written in 2 weeks. So, we do need to prioritize these buildings, obviously, but there's definitely some buildings that we are going to keep here without a doubt, and that those things aren't going to change. But just, I guess, did you guys identify anything within those buildings that said, hey, this is right for this kind of grant that Winnebago County could apply for?
Sure, I don't have specific examples, but I think Tim mentioned earlier that energy impact was a criteria item we included for each and every asset. And a lot of those items you mentioned related to grants, the Inflation Reduction Act, they're looking for potential sustainability, energy savings types of projects. So we have the information that when those opportunities come up, we can help compile things and put them into a potential project and grant application.
And is McKinstry also an ESCO?
Yeah, Tim, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, we are approved as a NAESCO, National ESCO firm. I might just add one more thing on the IRA, and which is the largest grant opportunity, which is why we keep bringing it up, the Inflation Reduction Act. It was designed not to sort of have folks replace equipment that just needed to be replaced anyway. The incentive there is to go kind of above and beyond, and so they're really incentivizing like switching over to geothermal, for example. So not replacing rooftop units with like for like rooftop units that need to be replaced anyway. They're trying to incentivize folks to go above and beyond. So solar PV is obviously one. Geothermal, combined heat and power for right now isn't incentivized part of the Inflation Reduction Act. EV chargers. There's some things, some grants within the state of Wisconsin through not only Focus on Energy, but the PSC that is really around designing sustainability plans and then executing those sustainability plans. So there's several opportunities there. I just want to temper the expectations that they're not there to replace a like for like rooftop unit or like for like chiller. They're there to go above and beyond and to really try to capture additional energy savings, additional greenhouse gas reductions, things like that.
Can you explain to the group here what an ESCO is and what you might be able to provide with that service?
Sure. Yeah. Again, I will, we have other team members that can speak more eloquently, but I will explain it as well as I can. So, ESCO is an energy, service, company, is kind of where the ESCO comes from. And, we provide design build services. And, when you provide design build services, for a project that has energy and operating savings, you can actually bring financing to the table to fund that project and then pay for the project over a lifespan. It could be 10 years, could be 25 years to pay for that project. And so there is minimal money upfront and the energy and operating savings are used to pay off the financing aspect of it. So it would be a way for um, someone to fund a project outside of your typical kind of bonding capital operating budgets. It's a different avenue to finance a project when there are energy and operating savings available.
How long will the IRA grant opportunities be available, and can you bank those grants? In other words, could you get the grant approved? If, let's say you couldn't get the project done for 3 years or something, can you get the grant approved up front in anticipation of the projects being completed down the line?
Yeah, so the IRA is I mean, they're coming out with many different, it's just, the IRA was basically a large amount of money that's going to be available for these types of projects. And what we're seeing now is individual grant opportunities coming out under that larger IRA umbrella. So we did see a K through 12 one come out recently. We're waiting to see one that could be more applicable to you all. That has not come out, but this is going to be over the next 10 years. And so I don't want to kind of basically
so it's going to be available for a while.
Yeah, and they're coming out, they're kind of rolling out at at different times. And so it would be hard to kind of say exactly when and where, but that said, certain technologies, no matter where they are installed, whether it's K through 12, local government, higher education, healthcare, those are available right now. And then within that, there's also going to be opportunities within different market verticals to help out local communities such as yourself, that we're keeping an eye on every day. Nothing is out as of today for that. They have released one for K through 12 that we're helping some school districts out with right now.
How are the grants funded? Are they funded up front, or is it over time? How does that work?
So that is what they call, so in some cases, like solar, geothermal, if you're familiar with the investment tax credit, that has been around for a while, the investment tax credit, but for non-tax paying entities such as yourselves, that was never an option. That was really just for more of the commercial and industrial space. What the IRA changed is they made that ITC and they call it a direct pay. This is the first year. We can send you some more information. The IRS is coming out with information sort of every week, as this is still very developing. And so the guidance is starting to trickle out from the IRS in terms of how that direct pay will work. But from what we understand today, it is going to be a lump sum check, basically, that would happen at near the beginning of the project. It wouldn't be something that would be paid on the back end of the project, but the guidance is still very much fluid and rolling out, because this is a very developing opportunity here.
Okay, well, if they fund the grants up front, I'm assuming there's some guidelines or regulations in place that wouldn't allow you to dip into the funds for other uses than the project itself. Does the project have to be started before the grants forwarded, or in later time?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm thinking about like solar PV, for example, because that's kind of the easiest one. I believe, that would need to be electrified, and then you would get that check back, and so that, at that point, can be used for, however, it's coming back to you all, so, it's more just kind of a repayment, essentially.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to
So
speak
we
too
have to
much
make
on
the
that.
investment, then we're repaid for it, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I believe so. I will send you some more information on that, because I'm getting a little over out of my comfort zone.
That's fine, thanks.
So are these grants, are they, would you keep us, for what our needs are? Would you be able to tell us, say, this grant is for you, or
Yes,
so you're gonna keep us in a loop, right? Okay.
absolutely, absolutely. Yep.
Perfect. Anybody else have anything for?
I have a couple more questions, just quick ones. What was the annual inflation factor you used for the cost analysis?
Everything you see in the report is zero inflation. It's presented in 2023 dollars.
Okay.
Reveal allows you to, the dashboard allows you to customize the discount or inflation rate depending on your scenario.
Oh, really? So you didn't use a specific discount rate to get that 90.6
What
million?
you were seeing was at a 3% discount.
3%. Any reason for why you use 3%?
Nope, I personally don't like 3%. I'd rather it all. go
Shouldn't
to
it be
zero.
higher, given what we're seeing out there?
Currently, you could probably make that argument, yep, but we, we are engineers, we're not financial modelers, so we don't want to dictate kind of what the county is using, we prefer to let a lot of people.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just want to thank you. I think our partnership has been fantastic, and thank you for the information. And it's nice to be able to partner with an entity such as yours to help Mike with resources that he simply doesn't have or wouldn't have in his team. We would have had to employ probably 4 or 5 people to do what you guys provided for us, and I just really do appreciate the work, the product that we got back for money that we spent, and we'll continue to get back, well worth it. Thank you.
Absolutely, thanks, we're just happy to partner, and Mike and his staff were very accommodating. Usually we get pointed in the direction to say, hey, your plan room's over there, so, do what you want. Mike was very quick to offer up any information they had to help us out, so.
And I also want to thank this committee and the county board as a whole for supporting this, allowing us to get this done.
Yeah, long time coming, right?
Right, Mike?
25 years.
25 years.
25 years, baby, 25.
No.
That's a long time.
Very nice work, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that'll transfer us over nice to the discussion of the 2024 facilities budget. I will say that I did meet with Mike and John for a few for about half an hour or so last week, and kind of overview the budget. So, Mike.
Basically, the budget, with the exception of utilities and the increased labor cost from the compensation study, has been flat for 2024. So basically, we're going to keep our operations the way we've been going. And the only increase that you're really going to see is due to the big increases are due to the labor, labor and utilities. But there's a couple things, the rent for USDA is most likely going to double in the budget. I put in what was the existing rent that we were getting for the last 25 years. So as far as I know, I've not heard that they've rejected our proposal. And everything during the negotiation process seemed like we weren't going to be out of line.
It's a net lease, right?
I don't know your terms.
Well, they pay for utilities.
No, that's included. Well, that's included in the rent. Yeah. So it's net,
Yeah.
we've got the utilities in that.
It's about 17 or 18 bucks a foot after year one. Year
Yeah.
one is higher because you get.
Right,
Really
right.
great.
right. And so for the last 25 years, it was
It's been
about
six or something.
$12 a square. foot.
12 it was?
Yeah.
Now it's 17 or 18.
Right.
From what I got.
Right. You know, so we are looking at, trying to upgrade our maintenance software. That is, a process that we're going through right now. We've been looking at a couple different, companies, but that should help us reduce some of our paperwork load in the near future, and should actually expedite some of the work that we can do. So most of the departments, we didn't have any real capital improvements to do. Nobody asked for, any significant remodeling work except for the courts. So there's 2 courts that want to have some remodeling done to their entrances. So we've got that in the budget. But like I said, for the most part, all the rest of our accounts and everything have pretty much stayed stable. And we're gonna be operating at, what would have been a 0 increase with the exception of utilities and labor.
Yeah, if I could add to that, yeah, the courthouse, it's an agreement that we have that they want 3 court commissioners, that we keep remodeling to a minimum and they don't move court, rooms. So they have agreed to that, except when we're looking at safety issues. So all the capital projects kind of were, or capital outlay for the courthouse were to address the safety concerns that we have in the courthouse. So far, that relationship has been going well. I will say that, just as a reminder, facilities does cover the utilities for every department as long as they're not an enterprise fund. So if you're not an enterprise fund, that department's utility bills will be covered in this budget. So that was a big increase. And of course, labor was a big increase. There's no revenue in facilities really to offset that. But again, we're hiring more people than when it was below $15 an hour.
Yeah.
So we are actually filling positions, so that is good. And then one thing I want to point out on the labor, on the workman's comp. I dug into that because it's a high number, it's a high jump that we see in the budget. So we revisited it and we think that we may have made a calculation error. So that might be coming down through all the budgets. So that might be an amendment coming up that we will propose to be done. Which would be good news because it gets us closer to even. And again, for the budget process, one thing I always want to remind people, that budgeted dollars does not mean that we are going to spend that. This is the maximum amount that we think that we'll need. So when you see a structural deficit, a budget of $2.5 to $3 million, that does not mean we're going to go $2.5 million straight in the hole. Most years we return more of that in the surplus of money that we don't use. We're just simply trying to get closer to a true budget. So if we actually do need money, we can go to the board and ask for that, to trust the board to do what they, do what your role is. And in that, we've been kind of trying to minimize some of these funds out there that have kind of been supplementing. We have to go to the board anyways to ask permission to spend those funds down, anyway. So outside of that, I think it's a good budget. Facilities is probably getting the second highest levy increase out of all departments. And that is mainly due to the fact that you cover all the utilities. There's no revenue to offset the labor costs. And that's it. Other than that, I think Mike's doing a good job.
We got a list the other day of the potential capital improvement plans for 2024.
Okay.
Last year, the board made the decisions not to fund the UW Fox stuff. Obviously, probably a pretty good move there. But how we prioritize that moving forward, knowing that we have this facilities assessment study, are you gonna be, I don't recall if you, kind of talked about some of the projects and gave your insight. I guess I'm just looking at, we did this, we should have a plan and a process and a procedure moving forward about how we spend our taxpayer dollars on what we need to do. Are you gonna be weighing in on some of this stuff?
I would like to. I think once I can digest this and put it into a format that will show, better year by year, what we should be doing, that will give the county board and the county executive a better idea on when a department comes up and says, what we gotta do, there's remodeling. Well, we've got these other things that we've got to do. How critical is it that we have to do any remodelings? And why can't you just use what you've got? So yeah, I hope to weigh into it. I hope we have a way that we can set priorities. But John did say, the facility condition assessment didn't take into account, highways, but it also didn't take into account like, doing the parks. We didn't really look at what the future use of the community park was gonna be, or boat ramps, because that's not really the facilities. And it didn't take a look at airport runways. So there's gonna have to be some coordination between other departments as to how are we going to prioritize what this is, because not everything fell into the facilities conditions.
Well, I think that's an important point to make, and I don't remember if McKinstry's gonna give a presentation to the full board or not.
Well, I was hoping Tom was gonna be here and we talked to it, and we'd probably try and do the same kind of dog and pony show that we just did now.
I think, I think it's important that the board understands that, okay, here's this assessment study, here's what it is, but it didn't include, we're spending $5 million a year on highways. We're spending, we just spent millions of dollars at the taxpayer dollars at the airport on the runways, right? And what didn't include and what is the true number if we're only bonding for $10 million a year? I mean, that doesn't look good with the addition, with that work that,
No.
if that's what we're bonding for is $10 million a year, and it includes, take the 5 off for the highways minimum, and then that 10 does not include for inflation, right? And so I think that the true statement has to be told to the board about this.
What is that 10 million limit? How is it set? I'm sorry.
That's a finance question. There's a reason I have to trust the
It's
finance
set in
guys.
stone? I mean, is that-
It's not set in stone, but it's something we have to look at. But there's also, if I may,
Sure.
we also have to look at how we do capital projects, how we've done in the past. So we've already improved the process. We used to be, projects would come one by the board throughout the year and you would pass them. Now, at least we look at our capital improvement plan as one lump sum at the beginning of the year. To kind of talk to parks and airport, we are almost done with master plans and outdoor studies on those to reduce maintenance costs and really long-term vision. The other thing that Mike has talked about and Paul has talked about is we put the engineering costs into the capital improvement plan. That needs to be pulled out. That is not building costs. And if we can get that part done earlier, we can have better bids or better estimations of what it's going to be and kind of speed the process up. Because right now that engineering waiting for the capital improvement does two things. It slows the process down, number one, and number two, it puts us into the capital project that we are then bonding for long-term. So kind of speed the process up and separate that out so we could actually look at the program of engineering. What do we spend on engineering every year? And take a good analytic view on that. For instance, highway, 10% on average is what we spend on engineering out there. But when we do $5 million of road work a year, that's $500,000. Probably hire an engineer for less.
Do it in-house.
Right, so these are the things we have to look at countywide, how do we work together? Mike was talking about getting together more with parks and airport, which is happening. Currently, these are things that we're doing as far as budget, how do we make this sustainable long-term? Well, how do we share equipment better? How do we know if we have 2 log grapplers, that should be good. Instead of everybody buying their own because we don't know what everybody else has and we can't check it out. These are things that we're working on for us to be fiscally sustainable long term. So that's all part of the bonding question. What do we actually bond for? So these are the big policy discussions that we're hoping to bring to the board and discuss and let you guys make some decisions.
Oh, I think you almost probably answered my question, but my question was basically maybe, I don't know which one of you want to answer it, but so how do you work together as a team? I mean, with the other departments?
Talk about your cohort.
Once a month, I get together with Bob Damel and Jim Shell and John Raby, and we discuss what's going on between all four of our departments. And
Okay.
sometimes we invite parks over to, if the topic is going to involve something or be beneficial for them, then we have them come over. One of the things that we've been doing is, we've been talking between the four of us with working together on having the qualified contractor stuff, and Bob Damel reached out to some of his associates, and we've got some information from them that we're trying to implement. It's just, everybody says, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Well, we just don't have one elephant anymore. We've got a whole herd that we're trying to take and devour. So, sometimes it looks like we're moving slowly on some of it. But realistically, we're taking a bite from this elephant, that elephant, and eventually we'll get to it. But that's how we're breaking down the silos, is we're kind of forcing ourselves to talk to each other.
Right, so it sounds like to me, all these departments are priority, you're going after the one that needs prioritize on, the thing that needs to be done next,
Right.
no matter what department it is.
Mhm.
So that's what you do.
Open lines of communication.
You gotta have that. If you don't have that, we're not gonna get anywhere as a county because, if you're working as an individual, it's just like the Marine Corps, you work better as a unit than as an individual, is that not right? And I think that's what we wanna do here in the county. We wanna work together as a team and not an individual.
All taxpayer dollars.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
And I would say the team has really come together. And
Yeah,
it
exactly.
took a little bit for me to gain their trust. I don't blame them. I'm a little eclectic sometimes. And what does this crazy pizza guy know? But I think they're starting to understand the value of the teamwork and the value of communication and working together. And I think they understand that my job isn't to micromanage them, is to get them to be better leaders and help them to remove barriers.
You guys like that, asking this question. And here you've got the four committees, the four departments.
Mhm.
What is happening with the four talking right there? Is that necessary for us to take and combine committees? Because the plan right now, I think, is the combined facilities and highway, but you're already doing it. At the management level. There.
Well-
This blows my mind. I'm sorry.
It's how we work behind the scenes and
Yeah.
how, whatever the committee structure ends up being isn't gonna change how we're doing our operations in the back end. This is what's working for us, and whether the committees combine or not, to kind of understand how that works, they do, and if they don't, that's fine, we just know operationally, this is how we have to work so that we know what's going on, so we know on equipment. And sometimes it's helpful for that. So.
This is
how-
fantastic.
Right.
Really, this is fantastic what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
commend you
I
for
didn't know
that.
what was happening.
Right.
I knew you guys talking, but
And then every other week, we do our management team meeting, so there's one person from every cohort gets together around the round table with corporation counsel, direct administration, and myself, and then we discuss. So it's not always sending information down, sometimes it's sending information up, and that's really how we've been able to overcome a lot of the issues that we've been facing.
so that it would go on regardless of what happens at the
Yep.
county, the.
Oh.
That was.
For the, until, April of 2025 at least guaranteed. I can't speak to that.
Say how many-
Right, yeah, great.
All right.
This presentation, just for a second, is this something that keep it scheduled during the budget proceedings, or is it already set in stone?
I think we talked about a special orders meeting.
Yeah,
Right,
and I think the next special orders is in January.
Yes, yep.
which should be before, we do the CIP.
Yeah,
Plan anyways.
I
So
think last
that is the
year,
intention.
January 3rd last year, so it'll be the first Tuesday in January.
All right. That unassigned fund balance, can we stop back on that?
What's that?
That's why you're talking about a flat budget, right? Because you get this unassigned balance that comes back, you know, monies you don't use.
Oh, right here, it's,
Monies you don't use, 168.
it would be, page 188,
Is that what that means?
188.
Unassigned general fund balance applied.
So in other words, you budgeted in 23, 6.83 million, but you really only spent. You only had a levy of 5.686, is that true?
Okay, that's what that.
That's a finance question.
Okay,
I.
I'm just curious what that balance of application is year to year, is it about $1 million, is it less than that? Is it more?
It is, what we have come in, if you wanna call it under budget, has varied in different years.
Mhm.
Because it all depends, like, for the last 4 years, we had some significant number of vacancies. So that's a lot of labor that
Right, sure.
got turned back in.
Mhm.
You know, and what we've been doing is we've been doing small energy related projects that we've pulled down our energy cost. But then again, like I think WPS is looking for a 7% increase this year again. So, you know, it fluctuates. And I would probably say, I don't think it's that much that we turn back every year.
Okay, but you're at 631 project for this year, coming for 2024. Do you have any expectations as to what that unassigned general fund balance would be for the upcoming year?
No,
At this point, you don't
no,
want to make that prediction.
because what ends up happening is, we could have some significant repairs that we have to do.
Yeah.
That weren't planned, but we rearrange financing or funds in our budget to take care of it. And we, you know, we'll defer, you know, let's say we had planned on doing $40,000 worth of carpeting. We may cut that back to 20,000, use $20,000 on another repair.
Yeah, that's a fair answer.
Yeah, so it's just like you did with the roadway. We combined a bunch of different funds into that to pay for that, because this project wasn't prioritized. So, you know, that's exactly what you've been doing, which is a great idea. Because we got, you know, we're trying to save the taxpayers money, for Christ's sake.
Right.
And not increase that to where we're overspending.
And one of the things I've been trying to drive home for the 20+ years I've been here is that if we didn't plan for it in the budget, just because we have money left over, doesn't necessarily mean we go on a buying spree.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if
What
there
comes around
was,
goes around. I mean, you use it, you're gonna have needs down the road.
yeah, if there's a repair that we know is coming up next
Yeah.
year and we have some money left over this year, we may expedite doing that. Because we know that maybe that equipment is on its last legs and we don't want it to fail. We
Well, I
don't
think the
want it to-
taxpayer should appreciate that kind of attitude.
Don?
Yeah, if I can address that question a little bit too, that is one of the directions that the Director of Finance, Paul Kaiser, is going to. We want to make sure when there's savings or there's overages, that it falls back to the general fund. So it doesn't keep rolling over like this, because it is taxpayer dollars. We shouldn't hold it just in case. And if we do need extra money in a year, we need to come to the board and ask for it. So this is the direction he wants to get to. Of course, he's still learning government, kind of like and trust me, it's about a 1.5 year learning curve. To understand how it works, and Paul's getting more comfortable there. GFOA is coming to help him out, but this is one of the things that he wants to fix. Capital projects stay open far too long. Sometimes they'll be bonded for, and we will put that tax debt burden on taxpayers, and it'll sit there for a year and a half before we spend a dollar.
Yeah.
Well, we need to be, and then when it's done, if there's savings that would kind of float to another project, we don't want to do that. So he's trying to figure out how to make it more, I guess, honest, if you would. Not that I'm saying it's dishonest, just the way it's
No,
always
I
been
would
done.
agree with that, I know, especially, for example, 980 project, you definitely don't want that to happen there.
Right,
Where you're taking away from units you should be building,
right.
and using that money somewhere else.
Correct. I mean, and that was, I mean, even that project, and I know you guys will get to it, that was simply just, they came in way over what we thought it was gonna be. And we wanted to have the max amount of units that we could. I wasn't comfortable asking for another penny, for that housing.
We're not, we'll talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we're on the budget. Anybody else on the budgets? Mike, just one final thing here, you know, as facility pays all the utilities, for the county. Are you, you know, I'm just thinking about this, I guess, money you didn't budget for. You know, real savings is changing the light bulbs and lessening your, payment every year or every month to WPS. Real savings is putting that energy efficient HVAC, that's real savings to the county. And, you know, you've done a tremendous job on, you know, your snapshot of all the buildings, that kind of stuff. I mean, do you have projects that you are thinking, if we do this, we can reduce, you know, our energy, you know, consumption on these projects? And that, I mean, those are things that, you know, that are gonna pay for themselves, that we should be doing.
Every significant piece of equipment that we look at, we look at getting more energy efficient equipment. You know, we've got the boilers at Neenah and Coughlin that we have to replace. We are looking at getting more energy efficient boilers for those, and better boilers. The ones that we got, you know, part of the problem we've got though, with being a public entity is, it's hard for us to specify specific pieces of equipment, because that becomes restrictive bidding. So we always end up having to put in there something that, you know, we want a train air conditioner. You have to put the phrase in there, or equivalent. And then we end up, you know, somebody will come in with some off-brand thing that's half the cost. But then we have to go through and we have to take a look at what is the real cost, you know? And sometimes we can disqualify those products and stay with trade. So yeah, to answer your question, we're always looking at that. We have the energy grant that we should be able to be awarded in 2024. We're gonna go through and we're gonna expedite replacing our lights. You know, one of the things earlier that I was talking to the fire inspector is, if you take a look at like Oshkosh Human Services or many of our buildings, 1/3 of your ceiling fixtures are on 24/7, because that's considered egress lighting. And we were talking to them, and before LEDs became as prevalent and cost effective, we were talking to them, can we put these lights on motion sensors? Because there's no reason to have a light on all night long if nobody's in the building. And we had a project that we were gonna start doing that, but LEDs started becoming much more available and much more cost effective. So what it would cost for us to rewire everything and put them on motion sensors, the savings isn't there. Just putting in the LEDs has saved us a tremendous amount of money. But we have 2 electricians that we go through and we do that, and they have to do that on all the different buildings. And what we're taking a look at is which buildings are we going to get the biggest bang for the buck. You know, Parkview and the jail, they have 24-hour operations. They have the lights on the most, so those are the buildings that we concentrate on.
So back to my initial question, do you have projects in the county that you said, boy, if we replace the lights in here to LEDs, we would be saving the taxpayers money? Do you have projects right now that you know of? Yes or no?
No.
We did, everything's good and energy efficient.
No. Have we come up, have I got a specific plan I can lay out for you? No, I don't have that. But
Equestrian lights, that's ongoing.
we're replacing the lights with the EECBG grant. But you know, we should probably be changing out some of the chillers. You know, I was working with McKinstry because we have the absorption chiller that has been disabled for a period of time because of the waste heat from the generator plants from solid waste. Those generator plants are now gone completely. And what we were looking at was, can we get the absorption chillers back into operation? And we kind of ran some scenarios, and it's going to cost us some money to do it. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to substitute fuels. Basically what it looks like the best thing that we could do would be to buy some micro turbines, have them powered by natural gas, and then sell the electricity or pipe the electricity into the jail so that we're not using WPS. But then it really becomes, we looked at the time of day electricity rates, and the micro turbines would work good running through the day when we have peak charges for electricity. But we'd have to turn them off at night because it's cheaper for us to run the electric chillers than it is the absorption chiller. But that only works if like the price of natural gas is at this dollar amount per therm. If it goes up, then that's not a cost-effective way for us to do it. It's more cost-effective for us to stay on electricity.
I read that.
So, you know, and that's where I've kind of made a recommendation to the county exec that, you know, it's really a roll of the dice if we spend a large amount of money to put these micro turbines in, that it's actually going to save us money 5 years down the road, and we'll never recoup our investment. So, you know, we've got projects that we talk about that all the time. But you know, when we replace the water heaters at Parkview, we've got energy efficient ones. We've got boilers there. We'll have to start looking at those, what we're going to do. We don't have, I'm going to just confess and say, we don't have the luxury of time to just sit down here and brainstorm on which stuff should we expedite replacement of to get energy efficiency. So it's kind of, okay, this equipment's coming to the end of its lifespan. How can we get something more energy efficient? And lights are the low hanging fruit. In the past, it used to be, you would package an energy reduction plan together with doing, like, we'd replace the boilers in this building and then we'd replace the lights, and the energy reduction would be big, or bigger than just saying, well, we're going to save, you know, 3% of our energy use by getting the better boilers. But I think I showed Andy.
Yeah.
You know, I've been looking at parking lot lights, and there is I happen to be down with my son in Alabama, and Hy-Vee is a nationwide grocery chain that has put in hybrid parking lot lights. They have a vertical axial wind turbine on the top of the light, and they have solar panels, and they're basically off the grid. So, you know, the wind blows all the time, so the wind turbine is creating electricity, and then the solar panels are creating electricity in your LED lights, and they seem to work really great. And you know, the manufacturer that makes these has them all over, and a lot of them in Canada where it's cold weather and they have snow, so it works real well. And I think I've told you I like the fact of axial wind turbines, because the way they curve the blades, you don't have the flashing of the sunlight on the ground. It's just, it casts a constant shadow. So, you know, it's pretty good. You know, and I'm thinking about asking if I can use some of the funds from our energy grant to put in one of these lights and just see how it works in an area. And if it works well, then maybe we will go through and we'll tell WPS we want to stop using the utility lights, and replace the utility lights with these lights, and then they're off the grid. And we save all that cost. So, you know, to answer your question in a roundabout way, yeah, we have ideas, but I don't have a chart. I can tell you these are what we're doing, and this is the time frame we want to do them.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Sorry,
Well, that's, you know, I guess I'm glad to hear that, you know, I was better to hear that than saying, yeah, really, you know, there's about 5 different buildings that we're using fluorescent lights in that, oh boy, we should really change those out to LED lights, so, thank you.
well, you know, one of the big ones we did was the high bay lighting in the exercise areas in the jail. Those light bulbs themselves are between $200 and $400 a piece. And they're 400-watt light bulbs. So, you know, we went with LEDs and, you know, we don't have to worry about replacing them in the next 10 years.
All right, well, that was a good discussion of the budget, thank you.
I have a question, or I guess if you would like me to be part of the 980 discussion, would you be opposed to moving that up next?
Sure.
If-
We have to
if-
vote. Again, you do that, or?
I can make a motion.
Sure, go ahead.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to move the 980 housing project up on the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, the discussion of 980 housing project.
It's under construction. I was out there last week and they were getting the grading done, ready to pour the slabs. We are waiting on the trusses before we put up the walls. So those should be here, I think, in about a week or a week and a half. The plan is still to get it up and erected and ready for occupancy by the end of the year. We did have some good luck in that one of the residents of the trailer has been released. And I've not heard back if he is actually out of the trailer or not. But we have to verify that he's out, and then we have another individual that will be sliding in there. But you know, hopefully we could have one of the single units ready to go for them to go in there and not have to have a roommate situation.
Quick question, someone asked me about the units themselves, they are detached units, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought, they were convinced that they were attached, but.
Oh,
No, that's not what I remember from our plan.
nope, they're detached with minimal space in between them.
While I'm speaking, I'll get this out of the way if I might. We did talk about what, 180,000 per unit cost
Yeah, I think so.
on these. My question is, why did we, if we budgeted 1.34 million for this, right? Is what we,
No, it was not 1.34. It was like 1 million and like
Yeah.
30,000.
Yeah,
okay,
It was just a hair over a million.
all right, but we're approved to build what? We were approved to build 8?
Yeah.
And we're building 3. Well, what about the, you know, if they're 180, that's 600.
but in order,
It doesn't, but also the parking lot and the septic system and everything, that's the
That's 300 or
units.
400 to do that?
We had to put curb around the parking lot to get up the code, even though it's on a wetland.
what ends up happening is there's more site work that needs to be done for the additional ones, because the trailer would be, we would remove the trailer
Yeah.
and have to do that site work. So that's what gets us up to the $1 million.
And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have the infrastructure there to put the other
Yes.
ones in place.
Yeah.
So we have built out in case we ever need it. So
How much
that-
additional monies are we gonna need to,
Hopefully none, hopefully you never have to do it, hopefully
well,
5
I mean, to
units.
build out the total number of units, how much additional monies would we have needed to do that roughly?
Probably twice what we have.
Another $1 million?
Yeah.
Just for 3 more units?
Well,
5,
5 more
5
units.
more.
yeah,
right, $180,000 a piece.
Yeah, I guess so.
Right. I was not comfortable doing that.
State to change the.
Well, not this year.
Well, that's what we talked about.
Well-
They could
We
pay
don't
the
need 'em.
policy, yeah.
And five units, I think, from what we have in Sandwich right now, coming out, I think we're okay. The unknown is we don't know how many are gonna be placed in Sandwich that are currently incarcerated in DOC currently. Sandwich is different, so once they've, done their years, then they get released to Sandwich is the step, and then they get released to us is the next step. And then out to wherever they go. So we're not sure that population, I think I'm okay with the 5, it was just a decision that I made to get this project going because the time was ticking and we had one that was released but holding because we didn't have a place to put them.
I would expect we'd have to watch that carefully so we can plan ahead to get the funding and get the
We have,
additional units built.
we have beat on the state endlessly
Okay.
to see what the future portrays.
And they.
And
Right,
we don't get an answer back from them. I don't know if they really know.
that
what-
gives you an out then, I guess, for the judge if you have to.
Because my question is, basically, you could, build 1 or 2 in the next round. You don't need to build all 5. Is that not correct?
Correct.
But aren't there economies of scale of building them all and getting them done, you know?
There is,
at once?
there is, but there's also, if we build significantly more than what we have, then, we're maintaining something that could be empty or we'd end up using for a different reason. But then it could become, an issue with having to displace somebody that's in a building when we get a 980 that comes out. So it's a little trickier than just having them sit there, because the last thing you want to do is build a building that's
Not gonna be
empty
used.
and then it's not, buildings are living things, I tell people, and they have to have an occupant to keep it going. Once it's unoccupied, then it starts deteriorating.
Well, there would be a need for the veterans, right? But, would you? Right?
Well, there
If this
would
was
be,
for
but
veterans,
this
we would've asked
wouldn't
for
be.
But you wouldn't have a mixed, you wouldn't have
That's
a
what
mixed,
be a place for veterans.
you wouldn't have a mixed tenancy, you need
I don't think
one
they
or the
would
other.
Well,
enjoy that.
That's not,
even if, let's say we did put a veteran in there, and then all of a sudden we get noticed by the state,
you don't want
Yeah.
to displace.
we have 120 days to put a 980 someplace. Then we're gonna have to tell a vet that he's out in 120 days. And then there's tenant rights that we have to look at too. If we're forcing the displacement and breaking the lease, we may be on the hook for their relocation costs. So, it's not a real simple solution just to build it and then put a vet or a homeless person in there. Because when it comes time to relocate them, it can be an issue.
Because I don't even think they have or do they have anything for the veterans in this town?
Not yet.
So
Got
that-
some irons in the fire, but not yet.
Okay, yeah, because that's one of the things that I know on Oneida and also Allegheny County has them.
Anybody else on the 980 stuff? All right,
All your concerns. Supervisor Swan,
I'm sorry about that.
nope, you're good. Any other concerns on that?
No.
You're satisfied?
Yep.
Okay,
all right,
Mr. Chair.
all right.
And thank you all very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
All right, moving on to discussion and action of a county appraisal policy.
Tom just left.
Tom just left.
We can probably go on and come back to it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's just do that.
discussion of responsible bidders, contractors, and county role.
We're still working on that. I'm working with IT to get the form that you gave me into a fillable form that's online that we can save and then put it into a directory that we can all share. And Andy was kind enough to share with me some additional information about a contractor from Allegheny County that we will put in our file also. So,
And
Well, you're in that field too,
well,
aren't you?
yeah, that file will then go, can share with anybody.
Yeah.
This is shares with anybody, and then it gives the municipalities the option to say, we don't want to work with this contractor because it's documented that they did something unscrupulous in this county, and we don't, because this whole conversation is around the low bid. You have to take the low bid. Well, what's defined in responsible bidder, and if that's put on paper by a municipality that's saying, hey, they and I'm gonna continue to go back to Parkview, cost the county taxpayers at least $40,000 in this, not having the locks in the doors, and Mike's folks had to go out there and take care of that, and they were supposed to supply a foreman on the job site. These are all things that because of state law, we have to take the low bid, and if these things are documented correctly.
So is that still the case? We still have to take the low bid?
Yes, absolutely.
But
Unless we have
unless,
grounds.
yeah,
to
that's
disqualify.
where this comes in though.
Yeah.
Is to where then you can reject them.
It's,
Mhm.
yep, but it has to be documented.
It has to be documented also.
Number 6 is.
Yeah. Okay, take for instance, the boathouse. I'm gonna document the fact that they didn't do it according to the design. While it's not structurally deficient, it's an annoyance for us, and that's, they were uncooperative in fixing it.
I have a question on that, but we can wait till we get to it.
And I'll just go back to, I made a comment earlier in saying that, hard to get people in the trades with the bidders and that kind of stuff like that. Mike's right, with the workload that people have, and it's harder for them to say, I'm gonna bid these jobs because they're booked up. That's a continual problem in all the trades, but where he's referring to a lot of these residential low road
Right.
contractors that don't train people and they don't pay them anything, they're having a way harder time keeping and retaining people because they don't treat them very well. Makes sense, right? So,
Yeah. So, and I've worked with, Joel Luke, our safety individual. I forget what it's called. But there is a score that you get with your, accidents that you file with the state.
yeah.
Experience ratio, I think, is it, or something like that.
You're talking about.
Yeah.
We can put in our things, we want to see what your score is, and if you're below this number, you're not considered qualified. Because I've heard that different stories that if a contractor's working for us and they experience injuries and that it can fall back on the county somehow and affect our workers' comp rate. I don't know. I've heard both ways, yes and no.
That's called a mod rate in workman's comp,
Yeah.
and certain entities, especially like a paper mill. You have to have a mod rate that's below a certain number, and obviously that if you had more accidents, you'd pay higher, higher workman's comp costs. Well, certain entities do not let contractors that have a high mod rate or safety record perform work on their projects. And yeah, you're right, that it'll probably then affect their bottom line. It's probably why they.
And the reason that you go with that is if they're careless about safety, they may be careless about quality.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So, we're getting there. We're working on it, and hopefully we'll have a process in the near future.
Thank you. Anybody else on this? We'll move up to discussion and action of a county appraisal policy. Tom.
Okay, I basically haven't begun writing this yet, haven't got to it. I do have the documents forwarded from legal. But just in reading through the facilities study, I'll look at some of that and the magnitude of this. And the possibility that you might consider dispositions, and that kind of thing. What came to mind with me is, are we gonna need an out? I want to put that question to you. Would we need an out in the language such that, say you had a property that wasn't very complex, like a piece of land or remnant parcel you wanted to sell? Maybe you don't need an appraisal for something like that. Maybe you can come to that decision without a separate valuation being done. Also, but you know, on the other hand, you may have a portfolio of properties like this where it is very complex. You have multiple different types of properties, office buildings, that kind of thing, where you would want the appraisal. So the question is, would you put language in there that would allow the board to waive the need for an appraisal? Would you have a board vote for that, or would you, you know, just have it be where, the department itself would make the decision on whether or not you get an appraisal? Something to think about, while I'm writing this. And also, it can take 1 to 2 months for an appraisal to be completed on more complex properties. Also, so if you have an expedited need, like we did for Harrison Street, for example, where you need to make the purchase quickly, and you don't want to wait 2 months for an appraisal to be done on a property like that. So I think the board maybe needs an ability to, waive the appraisal, the need for an appraisal at their discretion. So maybe you think, language like that should be put into this resolution?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so sounds good.
I don't know that you want to leave it at the department level,
The board probably should make that decision whether they.
or at least at the minimum, since it's property, maybe it should come to this committee. Whoever's.
Right, the committee, that's the other thing I was gonna say, the committee of jurisdiction would make the decision, and then the board as a whole would after that, or, so we would vote on whether or not an appraisal needs to be made on the acquisition, and then the board would, or not.
That's another month.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, you're talking another month, because they're not,
Can the committee do it themselves without board?
Well, if you put that into your policy,
Mhm.
and it goes before the county board and they approve it, then this committee can make that decision.
Yeah.
So how would you explain that again?
I would have it come before the Facilities and Property Management Committee.
Right,
And that if circumstances dictate an appraisal could be waived at their discretion.
at the committee level,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't need board approval for that, it would just be a committee.
No, because like P&F approves fund transfers up to a dollar amount. I mean,
that only
You know.
makes sense though, because I can't see any purpose in going to the county board.
Okay, yeah, 'cause it's just gonna delay, the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That just allows us the flexibility where we could say, yeah, we wanna do it, or no, we don't.
Yeah.
Because let's say you're gonna sell an Warren King building or something. Right. You wanted to predict about that,
Yes.
cause that's a big building, it's a lot of dollars.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out what to ask. If you're gonna sell it, you wanna know what you should be asking for a building like that in order to maximize return on taxpayers, so, but if you just got a little remnant land parcel, low value amount.
Well, you could put a threshold on there.
Yeah,
That's-
well, I'd hesitate to do that, but just leave it at sort of, language. Complex property or non-complex property, something to that effect, to be decided at the committee level,
Sure.
whether it is or not.
If estimated to be above $25,000, I'm just throwing ideas. out
Yeah,
there.
but when you start putting, we run into this problem with the MOU up at, when you start putting fixed dollar amounts in there as a cap. I mean, it changes so often, and then,
Yeah.
maybe in one situation, you might need an appraisal if it's a condemnation or something, even if it is low value, a low dollar amount, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, that's all I have for now. I'll try to get this written before the end of the year, but
Thank you, Tom.
yeah.
It's good work.
Didn't get to it right away here.
Yeah, no worries. Anybody else on this? Moving on to the discussion on the Oshkosh Human Resources Building Elevator Controls Modernization.
We are waiting on the state inspector.
Okay.
Oh, really? Is
Yeah.
it done?
Yeah.
It is done. And the state, I suppose they're slower than the last.
Usually, the state for elevator inspections contracts out with, I think the company right now is Veritas, is that? Yeah. But the state has said that they want to inspect this building. So we are waiting on the state inspector, and I think we were looking at it happening this Thursday, but I don't think we have a confirmation from the state inspector he's gonna be here.
So I still gotta trudge up the stairs, unless I take the old elevator.
For maybe another week. For maybe another week.
Okay, we'll have a meeting coming
And,
up.
and we hired Capelli and Dietrich to oversee that?
Yeah,
Okay, and then they paid Monet or whoever?
correct.
Do you still feel that that's a good way to, I have a hard time hiring a general contractor that, and this might be process, this might, I'm just gonna voice my concern on this, that, you know, in my opinion, we hired a general contractor to oversee the elevator to be fixed, which, and I don't know for sure, but I don't think the general contractor had a whole lot to do with fixing the elevator. That was the elevator constructor's purview. That was their scope of work. Now, I just get concerned that you hire a general contractor, then they skim money off the top. And then, so, but again, I don't know this might have to be processed. I'm just voicing.
There was other work that was going on,
There you go.
you know, they had to change and do some structural work to the
There you go.
building.
Good enough.
So, and we just
Well,
didn't have
I-
the staff to do it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
'cause didn't you say that earlier? Months prior to, that they had to actually go in and change the structure
Yeah,
inside the shaft.
uh,
More or
inside
less.
the equipment room. We had to run, we had to run stuff through the foundation walls and ventilation. for it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, there's just some things that at the time we didn't have the capabilities to do it in-house.
There was other work to be done.
Right. And Kone would not accept that to do it.
Got it. Got it. See, it makes
So-
sense. Yep, yep.
So, yeah, and
But the elevator is actually working now.
it should be working now, yeah.
Okay, good deal. Anybody else on the elevator? Moving on to discussion on boathouse project.
That's moving ahead ever so slowly. We gave
So
July and August, we were discussing with Radke's to try and fix the deficiency or the incorrect installation of the deck boards. And basically, we came to a dead end. And as we discussed a little bit earlier, it would have been something that we would have been going to court for, and would just totally delay the project until whenever. And it's really, the way they install it is more of an annoyance for us than a structural problem with the building. And it's potentially, we'll never experience having to replace the deck boards, but the way it was designed, it would have been a lot easier to do it. And because Radke's did that, they changed the whole way that Cardinal was going to install the building, so they had to go back to the manufacturer of the steel building with some changes, and,
wow.
Who's losing the money on that
who's losing?
with the change
Radke?
order? He's losing the money
Yeah,
on the change order.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's.
Because he
good.
did agree to that, is that not correct?
He said he would do everything that we had designed
Right.
for the price that he bid.
Which was
There's that
twice
at
what he
least.
originally bid, if you remember.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
There's that at least.
So this decking, is it a bad thing, or is it, because it's,
If you take a look at it, like if you have a boat dock. The deck boards go all the way across the pilings. And the
Right.
original plan had a C channel go across the top of the pilings. And the building would be attached to that C channel. And the deck boards would come up and butt up against it. So if a deck board got cracked or damaged, we could just unscrew it and put a new one down. the way Racky's installed it,
One
there's gonna
underneath.
be a piece of sheet steel, 9 inches wide going down the edge of the deck boards, on top of the deck boards, on top of the piling.
Oh, that wouldn't work.
Well, that's what our.
It would have rotted the deck board, the deck boards would rot underneath it.
Yeah, it's pressure treated,
Yeah.
so
Still,
it's,
water would still accumulate underneath that.
yeah. But that's where it's more of an annoyance, because now the building's sitting on top of the deck boards that I might have to replace
Yeah.
sometime down the road. So we'll have to take like a sawzall and cut alongside the steel plate,
Yeah,
probably take out 3 deck boards instead of just 1. And then put cribbing underneath so that we have something to put the new deck
Screw
board down.
and to screw into on the outside wall of the,
Inside.
inside the building wall?
Yeah. Cause the building's gonna go right to the edge of the outside deck.
Oh, I see, yeah. So in other words, why did they do this? Why did they not go?
Because that's the way they always do it.
Wait, but the piling is underneath the deck board.
Yeah, here, I can draw a real quick picture. So here's the piling.
Yeah,
We're gonna have a C channel go over the top of this like this,
you were, yeah,
and the building was gonna be attached to it.
yeah.
And the deck boards were gonna come up to the edge of the C channel like that.
Where's the building wall?
The building wall would be right here.
Right here, okay.
The way they did it was get rid of the C channel. Here's the piling again.
Mhm.
They put the deck boards all the way
Yeah.
across.
Yep.
Now there's gonna be a piece of flat metal that goes across here and the wall will go up like that.
That's a bit,
So if we need to replace this deck board, we're gonna have to cut it here.
yeah,
We're gonna have to put some kind of cribbing down here so that we can screw the new one down into it.
got it, yeah.
And we spent 2 months arguing with them about that.
But how do you, wouldn't there be a gap between the wall and the crib and the deck board?
It'll
edge of the
pocket.
deck board?
They'll pocket or, do something.
Okay, and that's just over the piling area, right?
Yeah.
But that wall's still gonna, okay. So the wall will be over the top of the deck boards where there's not a piling. Between the pilings,
Yeah,
okay. I have one more question. When they use the flat plate on top of the pilings,
Mhm.
and you're gonna bolt it down, right? Won't water collect on that,
it collects on sill plates on every building.
no, but that steel plate that you're gonna put over the top there?
Yeah,
Is it gonna be stainless steel or,
it'll be painted.
rusting?
It'll be painted.
Painted?
It's just like, we have steel buildings all over the place that collects water in the channels, and then we end up having to reskin the building.
Well, I noticed in here, they call for stainless steel door frames.
Yeah, that was a big part of that. I
All over
forgot to,
all over
that
that.
was big in there.
So I mean, something that would be low maintenance and isn't gonna rust out on you would be,
The sill plate isn't gonna rust any faster than the building. So, building number 4 out
the
here,
steel plate on the top of the,
yeah. Building number 4 out here, a number of years ago, we replaced the entire exterior skin of it.
okay. Is the framing of the boathouse itself gonna be steel construction?
Yeah,
So it'll be a steel beam coming down into a receptacle on top of
Yeah.
that steel plate?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
yeah. So, we spent 2 months arguing with them and we got nowhere. And it's to the point where we'd end up having to go to court to force them to do it. Or we'd end up having to do something with the performance bond, which would just delay this project.
This is what.
Forever.
So what's the projection
What are you gonna
right
s-
now?
Yeah, when are you gonna
Hopefully
start?
by the time the snow flies,
Okay. I ride my bike past there quite a bit, haven't seen anything yet.
All right.
so, but that's gonna be, we've got 2 projects now with Rackies that,
That's a nightmare anyway.
Oh, yeah.
we've got 2 projects with Rackies we'll document and, hopefully we'll never do work with them again.
That's on record. I was just gonna suggest maybe you wanna put that in your back pocket.
Well, that's, you have to have this document back up. You gotta have all this,
Yeah.
because the state created a law that you have to take this low bid no matter what.
Okay.
So,
I mean,
Well,
that's
wasn't
that's
that
getting
the only
right out
bid?
there.
Wasn't that the only bid?
That was
Yes.
the only bid.
Yeah, I mean, so there's not a matter of taking the
Well,
whole.
Yeah.
there was another
but
firm
they had-
that said that they had problems getting the bid in on time and
Oh,
they
they
were
did
late.
reject it.
And so we couldn't accept their bid after the time.
All right, well, that was spirited. Moving on to the Mike's report on operations. We talked about the budget. We're good there. And any current and upcoming maintenance projects you need to talk about?
Just to update you, the Expo generator project the bid should be due, the end of this week, I believe. The highway project for the office reconfiguration is out for bid. That should come in towards the end of November, early December. The evidence garage is out for bid. That should be back for, back in the end of November, early December also. So, other than that, those are the big things that are going on. I've given you the list of the ones that got some specifics. I can answer them.
Nothing on UWO.
Oh, UWO? No.
The battle's still on.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, Martin Rudd died.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand.
So
very
there's a
sad.
transition there, very sad. And,
What a good guy,
yeah, and,
great guy.
UWO Chance.
at Chancellor Levitt.
Chancellor Levitt's taking over. And we're meeting on the 6th of this next month.
Now, I do know
I know.
that UWO is going through significant staff changes. Their director of facilities is retiring. Her last day will be January 9th.
All right.
So I don't know what they've got going on with their,
We're not clear on it either. I mean, I got some
Yeah.
emails from Outagamie County is, chimed in on that, and we're not clear on that yet, so obviously that's gonna be discussed. I would think at the next meeting.
so Outagamie County is still withholding, their approval to go forward with the big, student center project. I know Paul Farrell, my counterpart, and I have still concerns about what they want to do. They want to replace the library roof. And we both don't think it's the library roof problem. It's more, I think it's a flashing problem.
Yeah.
Paul thinks there's some water intrusion going in through the wall. The fume hoods.
Just to clarify, that wall edge is up above the level of the roof, so you have a roof flash that goes up along the inside edge of that wall, right at that seam that's where the.
Yeah.
Is what they think. So they don't think they need to replace the whole roof. These
No.
don't do it.
No,
Yeah.
well, I've directed them that whenever we have a roof issue,
Right.
we go up with a hose and try and find the leak. We thought we had a roof problem at the jail, and it really was a problem with the windows. But that's how we found it was, we put the hose on the roof and then worked our way up the wall until we started seeing the leak. And it
We had
was,
leaks at the jail windows?
yeah.
Yeah.
It was a leak that came down in the restrooms off the lobby.
Did you get it fixed?
Oh, yeah,
They came and fixed the windows?
But the rub on the UW library roof is, we haven't been able to get the facilities guy up there, Tracy, to get somebody up there to do that test.
yeah.
Cause we don't handle the maintenance on the buildings up
No.
there, even though we own them, we don't, that's traditionally with the MOU been assigned to UWO to handle.
Their fume hood project. They finally have just about everything fixed, except now they've got some gauges that appear to be out of calibration. They said, we gotta replace them, and I said, well, can't you just take them out and get them recalibrated? That would be a fraction of the cost of new gauges. Have not heard back on that. And I also asked them for the written procedure from the manufacturer on how they're supposed to test the airflow going into the fume hoods.
The procedures that I have found is you test it with the window open 6 inches and open not 12 inches. And if they've been testing it with it wide open, saying, oh, it's not doing adequate air removal, then they're not testing it correctly. I haven't gotten that. They have the science wing windows. They're looking at going out for some design services on that. The windows, we had a forensic architect
They're bad.
taking a look at it. They weren't installed properly.
No, and
From what
all
I've
the
been told.
inside, that everything's leaking, there's
Yeah.
mold behind, there's mold in there.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
So,
And then the planetarium, right?
yeah, and then the planetariums.
So we approved all those projects except for the big kitchen
Yep,
project
yep,
last year.
yep.
Just to clarify
Yes, we
that.
did.
And Allegheny County this time is saying, slow down. They really want to, know more about what the future of UW Fox Cities is gonna be before they stick a lot of money into it.
There is a larger enrollment there than there was at U of the Fond du Lac,
Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot more.
yeah,
well, I took a look and because Yvonne Monfils, the chairman of the board of trustees, was saying that UW Fox has the second largest enrollment of all the 2-year schools. And it's like, really? And I went and I looked and yeah, it does. But still it's down from where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're
Yeah.
gonna shut down a facility like that, you're gonna shut them all down, aren't you? I mean,
Yeah.
That's like
Pretty much, and
highest enrollment. I don't see that as their plan right now. That I haven't seen any indication that that's the plan, that they shut them all down, but.
well, as an outsider looking at the UWO
we're
problem,
getting off task
All right,
here.
okay.
We're getting off task here. We're.
I understand.
Any more maintenance projects? Anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
no,
No,
I've got
okay,
nothing more for
all
you.
right, so next, items for the next meeting, I've got 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, and then making sure Corporation Council is here and have the Tri-County Ice Arena, on the agenda and just, to discuss that.
I have 6, 7, 8, 10.
6, okay, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11,
And try count.
okay. 6, 7. We think we
We've
need
done the
to.
road assessment.
Oh, okay.
It's fine.
I didn't know if there was anything else we wanted to talk about with that.
We can have it on there if
Okay,
it's just an update.
update on that.
Yeah.
And I mean, the elevators, I guess we can put it on there, then we can say it's done.
Yeah.
So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
And try count.
and Tri-County. Tom, you have anything else?
Nope.
So right now, our next meeting is scheduled for the day before Thanksgiving on, November 22nd, 2023.
I won't be here.
And I was gonna say, I'm not going to be here.
Okay.
But that doesn't preclude you guys from meeting.
Big part of the.
When are you gonna do this?
November
Well,
22nd.
the fourth Thursday or Wednesday is the day before Thanksgiving.
I might not be here.
So,
You do it after Thanksgiving?
well, but we're just gonna decide that right now. So would it be better for everybody to do the 29th of,
29th would be good.
okay. The next meeting will be 11/29, 9 AM right here, be the 5th Wednesday. So when we have, we made that decision as a whole. Sometimes, like I said, I didn't like the chairman would do that, and I'd like to do that in the bill consensus with your crew. Because sometimes, right, there was a time that I couldn't be here a couple of times and we changed it. I know it causes conflict with Jim with the solid waste.
Well, that's 3 of us that can't be here.
Oh, yeah, no, I know.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
so obviously.
Yes, yep,
We don't have a quorum, we better change it.
yep. So 11/29/2023. All right, gentlemen.
Make a motion to adjourn.
The motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
we are.